Welcome back to Cruiser Motorbikes. Thank you for waiting for this video. Today, we have summarized news about the most popular adventure motorbike, namely the Kawasaki Versys 1100, which will make a splash in 2025. Threat to Suzuki V-Strom 1050, Suzuki GSX VES 1000 GX and BMW R1300 GS. Kawasaki has unveiled the latest iteration of their versatile adventure tourer, the Versys 1100, set to hit dealerships in early 2025. This update brings significant improvements to both the engine and various components, making it an exciting prospect for riders looking for enhanced performance and comfort. 2025 Kawasaki Versys 1100 engine and performance. The four-cylinder engine's basic design remains the same as that of the previous Versys 1000, but it has a 59mm stroke instead of a 56mm bore to increase its capacity by 56 cubic centimeters, from 1043 cubic centimeters to 1099 cubic centimeters. That is insufficient to account for the 15 horsepower increase in power, and further examination of the engine specifications shows that the motor is somewhat more similar to the one found in the far more powerful Ninja 1000 SX, which will be replaced in 2025 by an enlarged Ninja 1100 SX. For instance, the compression ratio on the 2025 Versys 1100 is 11.8 to 1, the same as the Ninja 1000 SX, compared to just 10.3 to 1 on the previous Versys 1000. The engine also receives adjustments aimed at improving intermediate torque, which is why the maximum power is still not quite as high as the 140 horsepower of the Ninja 1000 SX. These include new center intake funnels, now 45mm longer than the outer ones, to boost grunt between 4000 RPM and 7000 RPM, and throttle bodies and intake ports that are narrower in relation to the engine's displacement, boosting air velocity, again in pursuit of torque. The ECU is reprogrammed, of course, and the cam profiles are new. Once more, torque is the target here, so valve lift is reduced. On top of all that, there's a heavier flywheel and a secondary balancer to reduce vibration, plus a revised exhaust header, and an oil cooler has been added. As on the old model, max power arrives at 9000 RPM and peak torque, now 112 Nm, 82.6 lb-ft, instead of 102 Nm, 75.2 lb-ft, comes at 7600 RPM instead of 7500 RPM. Drive goes through a 6-speed box as before, with an up-down quick shifter on the S and SE models that's been reprogrammed for 2025 to reduce its minimum shift revs to just 1500 RPM. The gear ratios have been revised to suit the new engine's extra power and torque, and a tooth is removed from the rear sprocket. 2025 Kawasaki Versys 1100 price. While the base 2025 Versys 1100 is priced £1,020 higher than the last remaining examples of the 2024 Versys 1000, coming in at £11,899 compared to £10,879 for the old bike, the higher spec S and SE versions less than £100 more expensive than their predecessors. On a horsepower per pound basis, that's a bargain. Try to get a 15 horsepower hike for under £100 on any other bike. The Versys 1100S is the outright winner of the bunch, as its £13,649 tag is just £70 more than the £13,579 of the 2024 Versys 1000S. That's £4.66 per additional horsepower. The Versys 1100 Southeast runs it close at an £80 premium over the 2024 Versys 1000 SE, or £5.33 for each extra horse. Despite getting the biggest price increase over its predecessor, the base Versys 1100 is still substantially cheaper than the S and SE versions. It's only offered in one color combo, a grey and black scheme, while the higher spec bikes share the options of their own grey-black graphics or a more eye-catching white-black. All three versions will reach dealers in December 2024. 2025 Kawasaki Versys 1100 handling and suspension. The engine changes might be significant, but Kawasaki has left the chassis largely untouched for the 2025 model, with suspension that's carried straight across from the previous model year. That means you get an aluminium frame with 43mm inverted forks at the front and gas-charged monoshock at the back. On the base Versys and Versys S, the adjustability is limited to preload at the front and preload and rebound at the rear, but the range-topping SE gets Kawasaki's KECS electronic Showa suspension front and rear. It uses skyhook tech, where the bike's position is compared to an imagined position above it, that skyhook, and if there's too much vertical movement, the damping is automatically adjusted to minimize it, ironing out bumps and dips as you hit them. The electronics adjust the compression and rebound damping front and rear, while there's manual front preload and electronic rear preload adjustability as well. That might all be carryover stuff, but Kawasaki has made a tweak to the brakes across the range, with a larger 260mm rear disc and conventional 310mm front discs instead of the petal design of the previous model. Weight depends on which version you choose. The base model is lightest at 255 kg e-curb, the S comes in at 257 kg, and the SE at 259 kg, each 2 kg more than their predecessors. 2025 Kawasaki Versys 1100 Comfort and Economy. In terms of comfort, the unchanged bodywork and riding position mean that we can't expect the 2025 Versys to be a huge leap compared to the previous model, although the increased torque and more relaxed gearing promises lower revs at cruising speeds, and the engine's increased flywheel mass and balancer should reduce vibrations and improve rideability. As before, the level of comfort increases as you step up from the base Versys 1100 to the S, which gets a bigger, adjustable screen and hand guards as standard, while the SE's electronic suspension raises the game another notch. Fuel economy from the revised 2025 engine is rated at 50.4 miles per gallon, which gives a theoretical range of 220 miles from a full, 21-litre tank of petrol. 2025 Kawasaki Versys 1100 Equipment. On board, the base Versys shows its age with an analog rev counter and small, monochrome LCD display for other functions, while the S and SE versions get a more modern version, still with a traditional TAC but using a larger, color TFT side panel, complete with all the usual Bluetooth connectivity. The higher-spec bikes also feature comforts like cruise control and IMU-based rider assist tech, including power modes and cornering ABS and traction control, again as on the previous models. S and SE models also get cornering lights in the fairing. Changes for 2025 are limited to the addition of a bar-mounted USB-C port on all 3 variants. 2025 Kawasaki Versys 1100 Technical specification. New price £15,649. Capacity 1099 cubic centimeters. Bore X-stroke 77mm x 59mm. Engine layout inline 4. Engine details DOHC 16V 4-stroke liquid cooled. Power 133 brake horsepower 99 kilowatts at 9,000 rpm. Torque 82.6 pound-feet 112 newton meters at 7,600 rpm. Transmission 6-speed, chain final drive, quick shifter. Average fuel consumption 50.4 miles per gallon claimed. Tank size 21 liters. Max range to empty 221 miles. Rider aids ABS, traction control. Frame aluminium twin spar. Front suspension $43 million forks. Front suspension adjustment preload. Electronic compression and rebound adjustment on SE model. Rear suspension monoshock. Rear suspension adjustment preload. Electronic preload, compression and rebound adjustment on SE model. Front brake 2x310mm discs for pot radial calipers. Rear brake 260mm disc, 1-piston caliper. Front wheel to tire 120/70 ZR17. Rear wheel to tire 180/55 ZR17. Dimensions: LXWXH 2270 by 950 by 1490 mm. Wheelbase 1520 mm. Seat height 840 mm. Weight 255 kilograms. Warranty 4 years, unlimited miles. Servicing 7,600 miles, 12 months. MCIA secured rating not yet rated. (2025) Kawasaki Versys 1100 rivals. Upping power from 118 horsepower to 133 horsepower arguably pushes the Versys into a higher category altogether, moving it from a class where rivals might have included the 107 horsepower Suzuki V-Strom 1050, 105 horsepower BMW F900XR and 113 horsepower Ducati Multistrada V2 into one where rivals include the 150 horsepower Suzuki GSX FWES 1000 GX and perhaps even the 143 horsepower BMW R1300 GS. As in the past, the Versys positions itself as pure street-oriented machine despite its high-rising stance, though, and that can pay off given that most riders never venture away from the tarmac.